start, you think, everybody? So if you can just press the continue to consent to being recorded. The only thing about you is that you might have a little image showing up on the video somewhere, or your name in a participant list. Okay, so I'm just going to start off by welcoming all 500 of you to this session that we did not necessarily plan 500 people for, so please bear with us with any technical things or adjustments that we need to make. And if we need to offer this again, or again and again, or we will definitely share the recording. We're happy to do whatever is helpful. So we're just trying to get something out there right away. We're seeing that there's a lot of interest. So again, we're happy to repeat. We're happy to do something new and different. So hang with us if you can. And again, we're going to need to just be a little flexible because we did not realize there were this many people.
Okay, bye.
So I'm going to assume everybody can hear me and that they can mute themselves. So then we can't hear you if whatever, your dog starts barking like mine will, or anything else. And I'll get started. Hopefully you can all see my screen. My name is Debbie Leslie. I'm part of the Everyday Mathematics team at the University of Chicago. On here with me are many of my Everyday Math author colleagues, many of my colleagues who do school support services work with Everyday Math. And so we've worked together on thinking about this issue of teaching Everyday Math remotely. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. I think with the number of people we've got here, if you've got questions at any point during the session, your best bet is to put them in the chat. And you can see the chat's long, but we're able to archive it and go through it later. So even if we don't see it and answer it right now, we're going to make it our business to do our best to try to answer questions. So the best thing to do is put it in the chat. So just a few little nuts and bolts about Zoom if you have not used it yet. You'll see some things at the bottom. You probably don't need your video, or you're welcome to have it on. That's this pointing where the red is. You certainly do want your audio so you can hear me, but you can mute yourself, again, so that you don't have to worry about any background noise on your end. And if you want to use the chat, that is also, if you see this kind of teal or light blue thing, you just click on that and you can add a question, you can add your name and your grade level information or anything else that's going on with you. We've got people on our team who are trying to monitor that, but do know that there are a lot of you. So we're just kind of doing the best we can. And that's probably all you need to know right now. I'll say again that we are going to record this. We'll put it in our virtual learning community and as many other places as we can so people can find it. So I am just looking. Yeah, so anyway, if you may need to adapt this if you're looking on a phone or an iPad as opposed to your computer. So, well, duly noted. So let's go forward and see what we're hoping to do today. And again, we may need to be a little bit flexible. So if we did all the Zoom tips we're going to do just now, we're going to stay in this big group for a little bit and talk about some very general sort of high-level ideas and suggestions that we have about teaching everyday math remotely. Those are kind of be around two kind of big organizers, what a weekly math menu might look like and why that might be a good idea, and also some starter suggested schedules. And I can't say enough that what we're doing here is trying to maybe jumpstart people's thinking and collaboration and not saying that we've figured it out. Our hope is to go into grade level breakout groups. And in those groups, we've done some work to identify what we think are the highest priority lessons in everyday math for this last kind of bit of the year, because you're not going to be able to do everything, obviously. And also we were hoping to get a little bit of input from you to each other about strategies you're finding successful, particular troubles you're having, and things like that. And then we would come back all together and just kind of wrap up and set some directions for where we might go next. So that's kind of our big picture. Whether we can get 500 people into the breakout rooms properly, we're going to make a call in a little bit, but that's our hope. And if we can't, we'll think of another way and keep in touch. So let's launch in. This has already been asked of you, but if you haven't yet done it, it will help us get the breakout groups. If you can find that chat box wherever it is on your device and put your name and your grade level.
Please don't put your name twice. Please don't put your name again.
Okay, please don't put your name twice. That is the voice of our breakout group maker, and she's suddenly got tons to go do. And then again, as I mentioned at the outset, if you do have questions, please do use the chat box. Don't get discouraged if we don't see it and respond right away. We will pour through this chat and figure out how to respond as best we can. Several have asked, we are recording, and we will send out the recording and all of that stuff. You can share it with colleagues. This is all for the good of whoever can use it. So I just wanted to start by saying what we are not trying to do today. Not that these things aren't needed, it's just not what we are sort of planning for today's session. It's not tech support for ConnectEd or for other platforms that people are using, or even a sharing of those sorts of tools and platforms. We are all learning so quickly about Moodle and Flipgrid and everything else, but this isn't what we were thinking of doing here. I will go to the next slide of what we are doing, but just so you know, there are some links on here, and we can put those into the chat for some places where we do have compiled some information about technical support with ConnectEd or other platforms that we know teachers are using, and we will also collect that in the breakout groups if we have them. But those aren't really what we're here for today. And the other thing I want to make clear is that we haven't figured this out either. You're probably farther along than we are. So we're not trying to suggest that we've got an easy or complete answer here, but we are hoping to sort of think with you together. And so that's what it's not, but we do think we've got some good things to share today. So what we envisioned this session as being was an opportunity for everyday math teachers to think with and hear from our UChicago Everyday Math team who worked on the books and who work in schools, and more importantly with other EM teachers about some everyday math specific implementation ideas. And the other thing we were hoping is to get some people together who want to think about this so that we can jumpstart some other ideas and collaborations. I do want you to notice my little puzzle slide here, because you note that these people are working together, but they are socially distanced. So that was a good find this morning for an image. So that's kind of what our goals are here today. I hope that they help you. One of the things that we've been thinking of talking about is, why an EM specific session? And one of the things that we recognize is that many of Everyday Math's biggest strengths, when you're in your classrooms with your kids and you've got colleagues around, can actually, and probably are actually, becoming some major challenges while you're teaching remotely during a pandemic, while parents are taxed and you've got your kids at home and all of that stuff. And some of those specific features that we recognize can be challenging are our focus on concepts, conceptual understanding, overall rigor. That's tricky when someone who's not a well-trained teacher, who knows the background information and knows the math and knows the whys of the pedagogy, isn't there every day kind of taking the lead and doing that. It requires a higher level of understanding and maybe a lower level of anxiety than the adults kids have at home necessarily right now. So we recognize that that makes it good on a regular day and maybe a little bit harder right now. Everyday math lessons are focused on discourse and discussion. Obviously that's harder to do when kids are not together in a room. It emphasizes a lot of partner and small group work, so we recognize that that's a challenge, as are the use of manipulatives and other materials. And even the organization of content can be a little bit more complicated. So if we were a workbook of skill-based worksheets, that would be, in our view, a lot less good most days of the year, but might be easier right now, and you wouldn't need to be at a webinar to figure out how to do it. The other thing that we think is really important to note is that Everyday Math has always prided itself on not being teacher-proof. And so one of the things we've been thinking about is how to keep you in the mix, how to help you keep yourself in the mix even while you're not physically with your students. So that's kind of what's guided what we've been talking about here, and what's some of the suggestions we're making. I'm going to pause right there and just make sure there's no big technical issues or anything else. Okay, looks like we can go on. So here are some organizing ideas for what we're presenting here today. One is thinking about 2 math lessons per week as perhaps a reasonable, manageable-ish target. Less may be more in this case, and this may allow you to do something that's manageable for you and manageable for your students and your families. Another organizing idea is making use of a weekly math menu that you invest considerable time in, I'm quite sure, at the end of the week or over the weekend or something like that, but then you set in motion and you don't necessarily need to be inundating kids with daily messages and communications and confusion, and we think that it may allow for some flexibility for kids' schedules, because we know that's important, and some intentionality on your part around what you want to cover and what you want to prioritize, and also some autonomy for kids. This third bullet is certainly not unique to anything we're thinking about, but using a blend of synchronous and asynchronous experiences to the extent you can, and that's where we're going to see probably the most variety in terms of people's situations. So for the rest of this whole group session, I think, yeah, so Andy just put in the chat right now, because you can't click on these links the way I can, the links to these 2 documents. There's a kindergarten document and a very parallel but not identical 1st through 6th grade document. And pretty much everything that I'm gonna talk through here is in those documents. So you can follow along, you can just listen while I'm talking and get them later. We will post them on the VLC. There's all sorts of ways you can get these. But that's kind of what we're looking at here. This is a screenshot of it down here in the corner. So just keeping in mind, we're thinking about aiming for 2 math lessons per week using a weekly math menu and combining synchronous and asynchronous experiences. So here is what, oops, you're covering, there we go. Here's a very basic sample, not filled in, of course, of what a weekly math menu might be comprised of. So the things that you might want to note here are, I'm going to close that so I can see it, that there are 2 focal lessons that are kind of the major components of this math menu. We're calling them lesson A and lesson B. They might be lesson 3.2 and 3.5 in 3rd grade. They might be whatever. Well, they'll probably be later than that because you're later in the year. There are sections for must-dos, things that you may need to kind of move things along, and may-dos, things that would help, things that would be good for kids to do at home, things that might provide some different kind of practice, but could give kids some options and some flexibility. Games, we know, are a central piece of everyday math. And hold on one second. And some possible do anytime activities. So you may or may not know that on Connect Ed, all of the everyday mathematics projects from earlier editions, which actually have some very, very nice interdisciplinary kind of at-home friendly type work in them, are posted. There are do anytime activity lists for every grade level. And so you could pick and you could either present those to kids as an option, or you could pick and choose from those. And we included here at the bottom some opportunity for kids to reflect that we think could be valuable for the kids, certainly, but also for you to sort of take the pulse each week and see how things are going and what's happening. So this is the most very basic idea for what this menu might look like. And one of my colleagues went ahead and populated such a thing for a couple of grade 3 lessons that we think are important to do if you haven't done them yet. And so you'll just, I'm just going to go back for a minute. You'll see that once you actually put stuff in here, it may be a 2-page menu and not a 1-page menu. But if you want to take a quick look at that, if you can see it on your screen, you'll see that most of the things are drawn from everyday mathematics components from lessons 6.6 and 6.7 from 3rd grade. Katie, who worked on this, included some more specific text and instructions for families who it would just be easier to have it right there. They're maybe not going on to ConnectEd, or they don't want to be opening a bunch of PDFs from you or things like that. Other families, you might compile a packet that goes, or a file with all the pages they need that come after this menu. So you're going to have to figure that out. You might include materials that are needed. You might include some information about where kids can access some of the content. The images might make it a little bit user-friendly. So that kind of thing. This is just what an example might look like. So this is no small feat to compile, but perhaps on a weekly basis, it allows you to be pretty intentional about which of the many, many activities that are in that book that you're not going to have time to get to, you'd like your students to try to access. Most of the stuff we've thought about are the focus part of the lesson, but this is also an opportunity to get some practice activities in, perhaps in the games or in the may-dos or wherever you think that would fit best.
Debbie, if we could pause, there's just a question whether or not this should be sent home to parents and students. So if you could just talk about that the audience is for families, students for this particular document.
Yeah, so the idea would be that this might be a document that would go to families students or in their families, depending on your grade level and your situation, maybe on a Monday morning to organize their week. When we go in a couple of slides and look at what a possible week might look like, Monday would be a great time to do a synchronous session, if you can do that, so that you can talk through some of these things. And then depending on how much help you need to give your families to find some of the pages and activities that are in here, that might be something that goes along with this menu that you send to families, or there may be directions for linking to things. These are things that I think there are probably 500 of us on this call, and there may be 500 sort of pretty good variations on how you're going to get that to your families best.
One question that's also come up, Debbie, is some students may not have access to journal pages during this time frame. So I'm just talking a little bit about how you can access those either through the Student Learning Center. You could also take a screenshot of those journal pages and post it. Obviously, it's not ideal, but at least students would have access to the questions and they could write that down on their own piece of paper. Anything like a Math Masters or a Teaching Aid Master that's recommended here, students you would be able to send that as a PDF.
Right. And one of the things so a couple of, and again, I don't want to get too much into the weeds of the technical logistics, but it would be useful for you to know that if you would, your district, your school would like some help getting access to journal page PDFs and things like that, you can get in touch with McGraw-Hill through your sales rep, and they are making some arrangements for requests like that, so for things that you might not normally have access to, and as PDFs and be downloadable, those requests can be made. The other thing that they've said, and Denise just referred to this, is if you need to take a screenshot of something so that you can PDF it and post it or something like that, because that's what you need to do to get it to your students, that's going to be fine. So you may need to do some workarounds and some creative things around that.
I would just want to pause for a moment.
Yeah,
I just want to pause for a minute. There are some technical questions about ConnectEd that are coming up. And I think if you came on a little bit late, just a reminder that it's not that we don't want to answer those questions, but we're trying to focus on how, not the what, but how we can help you to think about how you can make this work. And some of those questions will be answered through the 2 links that we shared in the chat at the very beginning about how to navigate with finding PDFs and such off of ConnectEd.
Yeah, I'm just going to go back for a second so that you'll see that when you download these slides, or I think these are in the chat, this link from McGraw-Hill has quite a bit of support for how you access ConnectEd and do all those kinds of things. and by all means, do reach out to your McGraw-Hill contact person. If that's not the way you've been using everyday math up till now, that makes perfect sense. And so you may need a little bit more support, kind of getting yourself up to speed on that. And we have started on the virtual learning community that comes out of UChicago STEM Education, an e-learning gallery that also has some information and advice about that. I'm just gonna jump back forward quickly and let you know that there's a sample for grade 3 kindergarten teachers. Many things still apply to you, but we also have done a sample for grade K because one of the things that we think may be a really important ongoing staple for kindergarten's math experience may be keeping up some of the ongoing daily routines. So that document that was linked to in the chat for kindergarten does include some very specific suggestions about how you might help kids and families maintain or establish some of those math routines at home. But you can see this is kind of a similar setup to that sample grade 3 menu. And if we need more samples for different grades, if that's a thing that would be useful, maybe put that in the chat and let us know so that we know that that would be something that you would find helpful. If this is enough to get you going, that's great too. So if you recall, I mentioned that one of the organizing components was some sort of weekly math menu. And one of the things I would say is that this is most useful probably if you have a chance to have some synchronous time with kids to talk through some of these activities, to maybe look at the focus activity of the 2 lessons that you've decided to focus on, and do as best you can some compressed teaching of those activities. But even, and maybe especially if you can't have much synchronous time, we think that some sort of a weekly math menu may help organize and ground the kids' activities and keep it from being just kind of an a la carte collection of something we might call math. And so that's going to lead us to this next idea, which is, I can't underscore enough the word sample here, a starting point for your thinking, but this is what a schedule might look like if you're in a position where you can get your kids together in whole group, maybe part groups, 2 times a week to focus on these 2 lessons, A and B. So possibly on Monday, you find a way for them to do the math message, and Katie had that in this, like in this sample, there, the math message was right there. You could type that into an email, the math message. You can take a picture of it. You can post it if you have a different learning management system. There's a lot of ways you can do that. But maybe kids could bring that with them to the session. And then perhaps at the beginning of the session, you can do some choral mental math and reflexes very briefly. That's an important EM component. And then follow up from the math message and sort of think about how you wanted to compress that key focus activity of that lesson A and go over the math menu. If you have a nice long synchronous session, well, long, I mean, kids can't focus, I don't think, for that long in a Zoom meeting, nor can I. Maybe you're taking a little bit more time with that. If it's super short, you're gonna have to look at that focus activity and really kind of prioritize, or maybe you need to do a little bit of a video teaching for that piece of it. Tuesday, kids would not meet with you, but would work on their menu, and maybe you would give them a little bit of guideline. 1 must do, 1 may do, and the math message for tomorrow. Wednesday might look quite a bit the same as Monday. Thursday might look quite a bit the same as Tuesday, and maybe you emulate, if this is a routine you use in your classroom, kind of a Friday catch-up and games day, so that families and kids don't feel kind of crushed by a rigid schedule in some way, but still have some flexibility. So you might notice this is a mix of asynchronous and synchronous. It works in concert with this weekly math menu, and that you could do this even with no synchronous sessions, although it's clearly much harder to teach kids new content without that. Maybe you can use some videotaping or some other resources for that. I'm going to pause here. I'm not monitoring the chat, but I know my colleagues are. Denise or anyone, do you see anything we should pause and elaborate on? Oops, didn't mean to do that.
No, I think we're good at this point. I know some people have said they'd like some other grade level samples, and we'll see if we can have each team at least put out one sample similar to what you have for grade 3 and grade 6 and for kindergarten. That's a great suggestion. I think we're all just on a time crunch. Yep, we'll get those.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We really wanted to sort of get something out there more quickly and then see what the needs were and respond rather than assume we know what you all want. So this is what a schedule might look like for kindergarten. The addition here is in orange, incorporating some of the ongoing daily routines and of course, taking out some of the things that aren't components of kindergarten lessons. Like we don't have a math message, but we are suggesting some fluency like a counting game or a number story. And we do have a sample, I think I showed it to you. Yeah, we have a sample kindergarten menu also. All right, so at this point, our original plan, and I'm going to turn this over to someone else in a minute, but I'm going to tell you what our original plan was. Our original plan was
Debbie? Just a thought. I've been putting people into breakout rooms, and I have the first 100 or so in breakout groups.
Okay.
So what I was thinking is perhaps we could continue with that, and then I could stay. Maybe Andy could stay, and for the people who we weren't able, the 400 people, we could just talk through the document for all the grade levels, but it's totally up to you.
Sure, that works better something than nothing, I think, right?
Well, so this may be a crazy idea, Katie, but what if you put everybody who you haven't classified first into K, and then the ones that don't belong to K go back to the main room, and then you put everybody in one and work up through all the grades, and then everybody can get to the grade they belong in.
That's too many people, I think.
Okay.
Sorry.
Because it's taken almost half an hour to get 100 in, so we're not going to be able to get to the other 400.
I mean, just put everybody into that, put everybody into the room, and then they leave if they don't belong there, and they go up to the next grade higher.
Yeah, but then that'll really take away from the other grade levels starting their conversations.
Okay.
You and I will just get 400 people. It'll be fun, Andy.
Fantastic. So the one thing I want to say about these lists that when you are in some sort of smaller format room here is that what we've done here, you can see it in the introduction, is someone who worked on that grade level or someone who worked on that grade level put our heads together and said, okay, well, 2 lessons per week, 6 to 9 more weeks of the school year, we should probably be in the 15 lesson range for helping you figure out what seems most essential in terms of content coverage in the focus part of the lesson for that standards grade level, and also preparing kids for what's coming next. So that's what these lists are. When you go to a document here, you'll see that there's some notes, some have more than others, that have some particular ideas about how that particular lesson might be adapted for this sort of approach to teaching. And so this is a document that will be posted, that is linked to from the chat, I think at this point. Andy, have you put that link in the chat?
I did. I'll put it in again.
Okay. So you can kind of peruse it there.
Yeah. And so in just a minute,
the other thing,
we'll get a link.
Yeah. Okay. And the other thing that we did take into account when we identified these lessons were lessons. I mean, if we looked at a lesson and it seemed pretty important, but also seemed like a non-starter to have happen at home, we may have opted to not put that on the list for now. So that was another kind of secondary consideration here. And do not take these with the appropriate amount of discretion on your part. If there's another lesson you've taught that you think absolutely should be on this list and you can live without one of them, These are just guidelines, is our best thinking in the last couple of days about this. So they're not meant to be set in stone. Okay, so that's what's supposed to happen now. And I think what you would see, many of you, is an invitation to a breakout room that will be assigned based on the grade level you put in the chat. As you've already heard, haven't been able to get everybody in them. So Katie and Andy and maybe others will stay and talk to whoever's here and work through that document. And we're hoping in those breakout rooms to get a little bit of input from you, but it may be through the chat because the groups will be big, just so that you can start sharing with each other. And one of the things you'll see is an invitation to include your contact information on a Google form, because that is actually the only way that we know you're here. We didn't have a registration. So if you want any follow-up from today, even if you want to ignore it or you change your mind later, but if you think you might want any follow-up from today, add your information to that Google Doc, because that's actually the way we're going to know who you are and how to reach you if you're interested. Okay, any parting words, Katie or Denise or Andy?
No, the first 100 and so people should have gotten an invite and should be in their breakout groups now. So Debbie, I think you're leading first grade. All the facilitators can leave, and then I'm going to share my screen and pull up the document to talk to
Katie,
people who are here.
this is Kathleen Pitvorik. You have me in 5th grade. Is that correct?
Yeah, there weren't
Okay.
6th grade teachers in the first 150. So I'm just going to have you join 5th grade for now.
Katie?
Yes.
Small technical question. Do I stop sharing and then start again, or do I just keep sharing but change
I'm
my
not sure it
talk?
matters. Maybe stop
Okay.
and then start. I'm not sure.
I will.
Thanks.
Okay, everyone, I just want to, so we're going to come back together, I think, but in case this all implodes, I think we really want to thank you for spending half an hour here and bearing with us, and we hope to continue to be able to help you, so let us know how. But hopefully we'll see you again right before we close.
All right, great. So for those of us who are still here, I'm here with Andy Isaacs, and I'm sharing my screen. So what we're looking at is the highest priority everyday math lessons, which were assembled by the author team. And so this link was shared. Perhaps you could share it one more time, Andy?
Okay.
Because our chat box is blowing up.
Yeah, right. So you want me to share the highest priority math?
That would be great.
Yes. Okay, here it goes.
So again, I apologize for the 300 or so of us who are here who maybe have specified in the chat box what your grade level was. I was not able to get everybody assigned. So what we have here, which you can also click into and view, is a list by grade level. So again, as Debbie said, this is starting from about Unit 6. So I'm just going to look briefly at kindergarten. This will be shared with you and available to access from the VLC. So our kindergarten author team went through and looked at Unit 7, 8, or Section 7, 8, and 9, and chose the lessons that they thought were most essential and also could be taught from home. So if there was something of which a large number of manipulatives were required, they weren't recommended potentially. There are also examples of notes. So I'll give you a minute to just look at kindergarten and see the types of notes, and then we'll continue to look through. If you teach a different grade level and would like to take a few minutes to look through your grade level, feel free to click into that. So one thing I would point out is that in the notes, for example, here, it says They could use real dominoes. If you have enough, you could choose to send some home. But there's also Math Masters where you could print them. And there's also digital dominoes on ConnectEd. So there are 3 options for how you could do the activity in Domino Edition. And it's a matter of thinking about what access your students have and what would be most appropriate. I'm going to scroll down to look at some other examples. So for example, in grade 1, they started in unit 6 and went through 6, 7, and 8, all the way to the end of the year. Not all of the activities have notes for them, but there are some that may be helpful, especially around planning. Andy, do you want to say anything about this document?
I'm sorry, Katie. I'm trying to answer queries coming up in the
Thank
chat.
you. No worries. So yes, our chat box is just wild and crazy. There are so many people, and I appreciate that. So some people were asking, how do I get my grade level? So all the grade levels are included in one document. So what I would love to have people do, because in addition to sharing this document with you, we also want to talk a little bit about some different things that you're doing. So for those of us who are in this group, what structures and components of EM are you currently using with remote learning? What have you found to be successful? So take a moment, put in the chat box. Andy and I are monitoring that. Oh, so some people are finding that they need to sign in to be able to access it. So this will be something that we'll have as a PDF and we will share with everyone on the VLC. So no need to worry. I see a lot of people have been using the math boxes through various different things like Seesaw or Google Slides. That's awesome. Some people have been having students play the games. And this could be online, or it could also be the paper-based games, depending on what they have. So Andrew Connolly has a question about how to save students' work, or how to look at saved work. We have our intermediate ConnectEd session on the VLC talks about that. So, oh, really nice point. Some people were having their students complete the math messages, which are a really nice way to get students thinking about the content. The activity cards, that's great. And I want to point out too, on all of the activity cards in the bottom right corner, it tells you when they were first used. So if it was extra practice, or readiness, or enrichment, you can go back and see where they first came in. I also see some people are assigning due anytime activities, which is awesome. Those exist for every unit. They're explained in the family letters, the math boxes, the review pages. Yeah, so people are saying they have no permission. That's okay. We will get this to you. It'll be available on the VLC. Yeah, only math boxes. That's fair. One thing I want to point out about the math boxes as well is that in the Math Masters, there are blank math boxes that you can make your own. So I'm going to show that just in case you have not seen that before, so that you have an idea of what I'm talking about. So for example, 4th grade blank math boxes. There are completely blank math boxes, but then there are also some really nice ones that have some of these routines. So like C, D, E, and F math boxes in the back. So we have place value is a big thing talked about in 4th grade. We have the different rules if students have used function machines. You can make addition problems, greater than, less than, area and perimeter. That's just one format. There's math boxes D, has some of this place value multiplication where they're starting to think about larger numbers. So for those of you who have already thought about math boxes and gotten your students into the routine, the blank math boxes are a really nice way to extend that and continue the practice. Oh, the home links, also a good point. Many of the home links you may not have assigned for various reasons. If they're from previous lessons, that could be appropriate. One person was saying they do the math message before and then use the online component of everyday math so they can work through the problems. Awesome. Another teacher was saying that they have students right within the student accounts, and then the teachers can view and score the work, which is something someone had a question about. So again, I would direct you to the VLC. We have an intermediate Connect Ed webinar that shows you how you can see what your students are doing on Connect Ed. Oh, awesome. So creating tutorial videos that support the lessons. Cool. Okay, so some of the platforms I've heard are Seesaw, Screencastify. I saw Google Classroom. Awesome. Yeah, so the parents have been enjoying the games. That's wonderful. One thing I'm going to ask people to start commenting on, there are so many messages, is let's switch to this next question now. How are you able to check with students to see what they're understanding? So what do they turn into you? How do they turn it in? So I'm going to go to the bottom. Oh, someone had a question, what is the VLC? So great question. The VLC is the virtual learning community. I'm gonna put the link right now. It's vlc.uchicago.edu, I think. Let me check that right now, I'll show you. So the VLC, yeah, .uchicago.edu. It's a free resource, and if you haven't used it before, I'm going to really encourage you to sign up and check it out. So from here, we have grade level resources. We have a whole section on teaching remotely, everyday mathematics. There are tons of resources like vocabulary cards, videos that teach you how to play games, videos that describe different algorithms. We have over 50,000 teachers that are part of it. So you just need to sign up. It's very brief, and I highly encourage you to check that out. Thank you for that question. So I'm looking into the comments to see what do you have students turn in, and how do you determine their understanding. So let's see. I see. So having students make videos where they share their work, having students make videos of their thinking. That's awesome. Okay, so assigning journal pages through Connect Ed. Great. Sorry, I keep getting back in my chat box. Do you see anything, Andy, you'd want to point out? Oh, using Google Forms.
Pictures of completed work.
Oh, great. Okay, so taking photos. Oops, I'm typing in the wrong thing again. Okay. Taking photos of completed work. Let's see. Google Forms is a really nice resource. So a couple people have brought up that students have been doing the work online, but you can't view it. So again, I'm going to direct you to check out our intermediate video about Connect Ed. Having students comment in the comment boxes. Okay, yeah, doing small group sessions in Zoom so you can actually talk to the students. Awesome. Taking pictures. Okay, so quizzes through.
There's a question about whether you can take screenshots of the math journal page problems, and that is okay. If you've bought the program, then McGraw-Hill is fine with you doing whatever you need to do to make it work.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I would point out as well is if you're using any Math Masters pages, when you're in Connect Ed, you have a flash version of all of your books, and that's something that is printable. But yes, you can take screenshots because we're trying to make sure students have access to the content, and we're living in crazy times. Awesome, great. I'm just going to send a message to everyone to let us know that we have about 5 minutes. Andy, do you want to answer any questions or talk to people for just a moment while I do this?
Sure, I can try. I think I can answer all the questions or almost all of them by saying I don't know, but I'll give it a shot here to ones I can answer. Screenshots of games or activities, yes, I think that's fine.
So we have questions about how to assign their work. So we will, we're planning to do some additional things around Connect Ed, some tutorial videos. It is a whole process of which there are many steps, and so that's not something that we would have time to do. Colleen Miller had a question about where are the blank math boxes. So the blank math boxes are in the Math Masters, in the TA section. Typically around like the 40s. So for example, I have them download. So in the 4th grade one that we were looking at earlier, this was page TA 63. But yeah, in the back of the Math Masters in the TA section is where you can find the blank math boxes. And again, there are ones that are totally blank, completely blank, where you could choose to make any type of question. And then there are several that have some structure to them. So depending on the grade level, there might be frames and arrows. There may be some different tools that the students in the grade level use often. Let's see, so I'm looking in the chat. So to get to the VLC, it's vlc.uchicago.edu. Yes. So I've seen a lot of teachers kind of talking about how they're giving themselves a little bit of grace and just saying, you know, we're working on it, we're trying things. And even the way their instruction looked in week 1 of this, it's evolved to look different. Yes. So the Math Masters pages, someone had a question if things are online because they left their book at school. Yes, absolutely. The Math Masters pages are in the ebooks. So are there tutorials for the lessons? Yeah, so there aren't tutorials for the full lessons, but you can see videos of classrooms teaching several lessons, and there are also videos about how algorithms work. But these are not something that you could share with students because it's a password protected, teacher-focused group. So just very briefly, if we look at how to get to all of our resources in Connect Ed, especially if you left some of your books at home, I have access to all of them, but let's say we're looking in 1st grade, in the teacher edition, along the side, there's ebooks. And so then all of your ebooks are available here. The Math Masters, the activity cards, everything. And from there, you can either screenshot or download, depending. So we're looking back into the chat. Thank you, Andy, for putting that. So to get to the ebooks, again, from the menu, all the way down here, every ebook, including the student journal, everything that you would have is in these menus. And I would encourage you again, under the online, let's see, supports for e-learning and the Connect Ed, right? When you start at Connect Ed at the beginning, you'll see supports for e-learning. And we have 2 different Connect Ed sessions that we've hosted, and we plan to host some new ones as well. You can also see if you're having trouble with how to add students to a class. The other thing that is really nice is there are game demonstrations that go to Vimeo that you can show for parents how to play games. So these are just a few games, but they are public to parents. Let's see, let me go back to the chat. I'm searching for the VLC. Okay, so the intermediate is right here. Intermediate session. If you go to e-learning support webinars, the intermediate session is here and you can watch it at your leisure. So I'm just gonna bring people back. I'm gonna send a message to let everyone know we're coming back in 1 minute. And I want to really thank all of the people in this gigantic group. I appreciate your patience and the fact that you weren't assigned to see your specific grade level. But the only thing that was different than our discussion was just the high priority lessons. They spoke specifically about the grade level. Okay, so this will be, they didn't say more than the notes and some tips. So this is public to you. It will be on the VLC. And one thing I want to share from our breakout groups is if you would like to keep in contact with other people from the grade level, I'm going to ask you to fill out this Google form. I'm going to put it in the chat right now to everybody.
Katie,
Yes.
you create that form?
Yes.
So there were some people said that you needed a UChicago ID domain. So I fiddled with the permissions. I hope I.
Oh, great. I thought I had made it the correct thing, but perhaps I did not. So thank you for that. I'm going to close all the breakout groups and we should have everybody back with us. Oh, thank you. Okay. Awesome. And so we will be taking everybody's emails and information, especially since we were not the ones who were able to get into our grade level groups, and we'll be connecting you. And if we do specific grade level webinars going forward, for example, all the first grade teachers, you'll be on the list that will get that notification. So I'm thinking based on the interest and the number of people we've had, we're going to be thinking about what other supports we can have going forward, especially grade level specific. So if you have any other questions, you can enter them into the Google form. And I would encourage you as well, you can put them in the chat, but as you can see, our chat is very large. So this Google form is a really nice opportunity for us to make sure we have seen and heard all of your questions and comments.
You're using the SLT, but you haven't figured out how to get their info back?
Yeah. And so there are some points that are being brought up about talking about Connect Ed. And we may do grade level specific Connect Ed videos, but at this point, I'm not sure. So I would encourage you to start by looking at the 2 videos on the VLC. Welcome back, Debbie. I'm gonna let you unmute yourself and I'll mute myself as everyone's starting to come back.
I've also put the link for the survey form in the chat. If you didn't have a chance to do that in your grade level breakout groups, that form is there. Oh, and Katie, you did too. Katie, you're muted.
Is everybody back?
I think so. I think Katie closed all the breakout rooms, so we should all be back in the main room.
Yep, everyone's back.
So will we know? Yes. Okay, never mind. Sorry.
Oh, Debbie is muted. Let's unmute her. All right, you're unmuted, Debbie.
Thanks. Oh, I just had so many important things. No, I didn't. What I wanted to say was that if the other groups, and I'm sure they were like the first grade group, I want to just thank everyone for jumping in and adding to the Google Doc and sharing your ideas and putting your questions and starting a conversation about this. I also want to say, at the very least, to the first grade group to please do look in the chat where they just put the link, because I did not share with you that Google form for your contact information. And I know that we'd love to stay in touch with you if you're interested. So I think we've said this many times. We will post everything here. All the documents will be posted, or you can continue to follow your links, either one. If there are questions in the chat or that came up in the breakout room that we didn't answer but think we can answer, we will do our very best to do that and figure out how to follow up with you all if you're in the Google Doc chat. And we're open to having more virtual grade level working groups or things like that. And so please do provide any suggestions that you have for things like that. In the chat or in that shared Google Doc would be fine that had grade level breakout groups. We'll also save and post or circulate that. So is there anything else that one of my colleagues want to say before we wrap up here?
So one thing people were asking about was just, can we also send things out? And so if you've completed the form and shared your email, we can send all of the documents. You have them that way as well. But we do encourage everyone to sign up for the VLC.
And we put the link to the VLC also in the chat in case the VLC is new to you. I can put it at the very bottom so that you can see that again. And we also place the link to the form in the chat again also.
All right, so it's 1:58. I think we just really want to thank you for coming. Thank you for everything you are doing right now. I cannot imagine a harder job during a pandemic than the one
I want to say one
you're
thing.
doing.
I was just going to say, if you have created something that you find is really helpful, we encourage you to please post it on the virtual learning community so others can have access. We're also trying to make it work so that if you've recorded yourself doing a lesson and you're willing to share that with other people, so that, you know, if you created 7.2 and I don't have to do that and I'm recording my lessons, I can take yours. That would be great. We'd have to work out a way for you to somehow get me the video, and I could probably upload it. So we want to help you in any way we can.
Can you post that link again for the V whatever, because now everybody
Virtual learning
gonna
community,
miss it.
sure.
Thanks.
It's just really vlc.uchicago.edu. That'll take you to the main screen. Because the chat is kind of going nuts. The contact.
And there's a few things up there already, but you know, if everybody works, all the teachers, all of us, if we all work at a team, we could come up with a really great resource.
So I think we'll go ahead and, Katie, if you want to just end the meeting, and then if our team wants to, I'll send an invite for our team to